Hello, hi, how are you? Welcome to another podcast by George, and I'm glad you're here. And I'm really glad you're here. I hope you enjoy listening to these as much as I do producing them. It's a flashback for me, and that's kind of the subject of our show today overall, I think, maybe a throwback. And definitely fun to do, and I hope it's fun to listen to. And I wanted to start today with a story that's top of mind with me. I just love this. It's entitled Cajun Navy. Volunteers help evacuate North Carolina nursing home residents. Maybe you've heard about these guys. A group of volunteers all too familiar with devastating flooding have gone to North Carolina to help in the aftermath of Florence. Cajun Navy Relief and Rescue is a nonprofit group of volunteers from across the country. The group was created after flooding hit southern Louisiana in 2016. CBS News was with the team in Lumberton as they evacuated 40 people from Highland Acres Nursing and Rehabilitation Center. Many of the residents were bedridden. "Yeah, we're risking our lives, but this is worth it," said Chris Russell, one of the volunteers. It took 5 hours to rescue the residents and deliver them to area hospitals. Quote, "I think that we were able to accomplish something tonight, and we gave these people some dignity, holding their hand, asking them if they would like to have somebody to pray with them," said Alan Leonard, another volunteer. "As much as I believe we were a blessing to those people, I know as a matter of fact that they were a blessing to me tonight." That city has a history of flooding. 2 years ago, Hurricane Matthew dumped 20 inches of rain on Lumberton. And dramatic rescues have become a common sight after storms across the country. Last year, CBS News saw volunteers go out in Houston in the aftermath of Hurricane Harvey. Other Cajun Navy volunteers became famous for helping to rescue people trapped by floodwaters in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. The makeshift flotilla is credited with rescuing more than 10,000 people from flooded homes and rooftops. Man, that's just great. What I always say is that you've got the Coast Guard, you've got fire and rescue personnel, you've got the National Guard, and those guys are doing heroic efforts on their own account, but they're paid to do that. That's kind of their job, and they're experienced and expected to do that. These guys, they're just guys. I mean, they're just people with shallow bottom fishing boats down in the Louisiana area primarily, I think, that load up and go to help out people that really do need help. And I think that's just great. Now, my cynicism with this comes from the fact that the right-wing media, and to me that's mostly Fox News, but they've adopted these guys. They've kind of tried to claim them as their own. If you tune in Fox News and look at the makeup plastered faces leering into the television screen, they're just aglow with the Cajun Navy. And I again, maybe it's just cynicism, but is it because these guys are Southerners and they're white Southerners that they've been adopted by the right-wing media? My question is, for them, if these were people of color, let's say they belong to a jazz band in New Orleans, Louisiana, and they decided to load up and go to North and South Carolina to perform music for people to help them overcome some of their sorrow and grief and sense of loss, would Fox News be all over them like they are these guys? I don't think so. And they even want you to believe that they're like the only people that are covering them. That's not true. You don't own these guys. They're on CBS, they're on ABC, they're on NPR, PBS. These guys are everywhere. You don't own them. They don't belong to you. They belong to us. We're Americans. We're all in this together. So that's the story today with the Cajun Navy. They're volunteers, and just the other day they were out there helping evacuate North Carolina nursing home residents. And everything's been about the weather lately, including these podcasts. And I just want to say, in this part of the country, we're experiencing warmer than normal weather, of course. And kind of like an Indian summer, a little early for that. But it's been hot out here. And it's the end of a season. It's the end of the sweet corn season for anybody that's from this part of the country or visited, that's a big deal. It starts about July 4th with the way they push the sweet corn up out of the ground now, and it lasts until about this time of year. And we used to say it's down to the Nubbins. And anybody that's a farmer from back in the day could probably explain to you exactly what that means. But it means the ears are small, the season's over with, and there's not much sweet corn left. And that's what makes me feel nostalgic. I remember as a kid, we used to sell sweet corn on the street corner. My dad, my old man, used to take me up to the corner, the back of a pickup, and sell sweet corn for 65 cents during prime season. And this time of year, it was 45 cents a dozen, if you can believe that. They now sell it for about $7 a dozen. But I'd go up there with my muffin tin and some change and sell it out of the back end of the pickup. And then he would go across the street to a television shop, believe it or not, where a drinking buddy of his was. And they'd sit over there with some other guys and drink. And this was alcoholism when alcoholism was alcoholism, folks. Let me tell you, this was heavy drinking stuff. And he'd use the money that I'd bring in selling sweet corn to buy more booze for those guys. And when it was all over with, I would go to the pharmacy. There was a drugstore right next to this television repair shop, and sit there and read comic books and read them out loud to Mr. Parker. He was the drugstore owner. And people often ask me, how did you get started in radio? How did you learn, to read out loud the way that you do? And I was always an excellent reader in radio, by the way. I could read flawlessly for half an hour. I don't know how long, maybe even longer than that as far as the news was concerned. I could read news copy upside down. And I think it was mostly just experience. And I think it all started with Mr. Parker there in the drugstore. I would get out the latest Superman, Batman, and Spider-Man comic books, and I would take some of the pennies that I had from selling sweet corn and buy some penny candy, and he'd sit there and listen to me read those comic books out loud. And that's how it, I think, all began for, too brief career in broadcasting, and maybe even the ability up to today to do these podcasts at this advanced age, selling sweet corn for 45 cents a dozen when we were down to the Nubbins and reading comic books for Mr. Parker at Parker's Drugstore. I don't know why it is, but the older you get, the more you like to talk about yesteryear. It's always fun to look back and talk about old times, even tough times like that. Let's talk a little bit about today. Let's talk politics and this Michael Avenatti character. I'm sure that you've caught some of his act on television. He's an attorney that's representing Stormy Daniels, the right wing that Fox News folks refer to him as a creepy porn lawyer. He's more than that, of course. He's representing Stormy. She is a porn actress, but she has a legitimate complaint, a gripe with the President of the United States. She's going to prove that he lied. And, of course, not only lied, but lied in an attempt to win the election, to buy her silence so that it wouldn't affect the outcome, spending money specifically related to the campaign, which is a direct violation of campaign disclosure laws and is going to land Trump, I believe, in big-time hot water in this term and certainly preclude his opportunity to win a second term. And in the meantime, this Avenatti guy says that he's going to run. He's already been in the state of Iowa making some campaign appearances. I think he's been out maybe in New Hampshire. He's testing the waters. He's got a little bit of an organization behind him. And heretofore in yesteryear, a lot of people would have said, this guy's got no shot. He's got no chance at all. He's far too argumentative. He's far too aggressive. He's not presidential in his demeanor, and he's not the kind of guy that the Democratic Party would elect. Well, if there's anything that I've learned in politics recently, it's that the old ways of doing things have changed. And I'm not so sure that they didn't get changed again going back to the era of Ronald Reagan. Here was Reagan I refer to him as a broken down old B movie actor. He became president after being governor of the state of California. He was the head of the Actors Union, I think. But besides from that, not a lot of political experience, and absolutely beloved by the right wing. Elected to 2 terms. They want to put his face on Mount Rushmore. And after that, Donald Trump, a reality show host, a multi-millionaire, money launderer, paper changer. I don't know what you want to call this guy. Any number of terms would apply. But he got elected president of the United States, and he did everything that everybody said that you can't do, most notably speak out of both sides of your mouth and lie constantly and become president of the United States. He proved that, yeah, you can. You can lie every single day, lots of times, and get elected president of the United States. And he was just a silver spoon money launderer from the East Coast with some television experience and had been on media for a number of years. I don't know that he had any more baggage than this Michael Avenatti character. And what's interesting about Avenatti is he says he's going to fight him. He's not going to play the game the way that it's been played in the past. He's going to go right at him. And he went right at him this week on the Tucker Carlson show on Fox. I don't know if you caught any of that, but it was very interesting to see this bulldog going after a Fox television commentator on his home turf. Listen to this.
Why is it that you don't call Donald Trump the creepy porn president? He's the one that had sex with a 4-month-old son at home with my client without a condom.
Now, does that sound like a presidential candidate to you? In years past, I would have said no. But in today's political environment, and the Republicans have caused that, they've got nobody to blame but themselves because they brought those 2 peculiar candidates to the history books of America. Both Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump were extremely non-conventional, unusual presidential candidates and eventually presidents of the United States. So could this Avenatti become president? And if he did become president, is he one of the last best hopes of unwinding what they've been able to bring upon the country in just a couple of very short years with the president that we currently have and, of course, the Republican Congress that's enabling him? I don't know. It's food for thought. If you want to win, if you want to get things changed, if you want to see it happen in your lifetime, this guy might be the next best bet. And he does bring a fresh perspective. This is a different way of looking at things. I remember going back to Barack Obama and even before them, I remember the Democratic politicians telling America that what we currently are suffering from, the current circumstance, could never happen because Americans are better than that. Americans are smarter than that. They would never vote for a venal, narcissistic, advantage-taking, corrupt, rotten, former reality show host like Donald Trump. We wouldn't do that in this country. Well, here's news for you. We did it. Here we are. I think we are that bad. I think we are that stupid. I think, as I've always said, Donald Trump is simply the mirror. We've met the enemy, folks, and it's in the mirror. And if we're going to go and win this battle, if we're going to go toe-to-toe with these forces of doing things in a bad, bare-knuckle fashion, this is not going to be polite. The day for politeness is over with. The day for a Michael Avenatti, bulldog, Democratic presidential candidate may be here. It could be happening. Because what Avenatti says is he's not going to compromise. He's not going to placate. He's not going to give. He's going to get. Avenatti says he's going to go in there and fight him. He's going to take. That's what they've done to us. They didn't negotiate. They didn't barter. It wasn't a to and fro. It was a straightaway takeaway. And that's what Michael Avenatti, or perhaps somebody like him, says that he's going to do. And it maybe has to go back to his experience as a trial attorney that simply is very competitive and wants to win. And I've been fooled along those lines before, and it wasn't that long ago, and I'll tell you how. If you remember John Edwards, one of the things that I thought was most appealing about his candidacy, other than his issues, which I thought were straight up and down probably the best issues of any presidential candidate that we've seen in modern history. One of the things that was most appealing about John Edwards was he said, look, I fought these guys in the courts of law from coast to coast my entire adult life, talking about the vast right-wing conspiracy, if you want to call it that. He says, I'm not going to negotiate with them. I'm going to beat them. I've beat them every time. I've never lost. I'll show you how it's done. Well, unfortunately, they showed him how it was done. One child out of wedlock, one National Enquirer story, and John Edwards' candidacy was history, and that idea of fighting back has pretty much been on the shelf since then. So let's see what Michael Avenatti has got up his sleeve. Let's see what this guy can get done. Give him a shot. Although he may have baggage also, just like John Edwards, that'll bring him down before he gets too far along. It's still early, but it's very interesting indeed. Michael Avenatti for president. Who'd have thunk it? All right, okay. Next up on the podcast by George, I wanted to get to this article submitted by one of our charter listeners, somebody that's been listening to each and every episode of the podcast since we first started 7 podcasts ago. This headline is entitled, Fox News Reports That Fans Are Just Furious. Willie Nelson would have a rally with Beto O'Rourke. It appeared in Mother Jones. It's written by Jackie Flynn Mogensen, and it reads, on Wednesday, music legend Willie Nelson announced that he'd headline a rally for Democratic Representative Beto O'Rourke, who is challenging Senator Ted Cruz at a Texas amphitheater later this month. According to Fox News, fans are absolutely furious that a pot-smoking, reincarnation-believing environmentalist like Nelson would do such a thing. My wife Annie and I have met and spoken with Beto, and we share his concern for the direction things are headed, Nelson said in a press release announcing the concert. Willie says, Beto embodies what is special about Texas, an energy and an integrity that is completely genuine. Well, Willie shared the press release on his Facebook page, and according to Fox, fans were taken aback by the news, writing things like, quote, I've always thought you were a patriot, but you have jumped the shark, my friend. Or this one, Beto O'Toole, a.k.a. Comrade O'Rourke, is a step too far. Let me know when you come back from your bad acid trip. That is all. End quote. Another commented, goodbye, Willie. I don't support socialist commies. Now, one fan pointed out that what we were all thinking. It's been pretty obvious for a long time that Willie Nelson is not a conservative. Well, do you think? Nelson has in the past supported candidates like Ohio Congressman Dennis Kucinich, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and he once wrote a Trump-inspired song called Delete and Fast Forward. Here are some of the lyrics, and I won't do them justice, but here are some of the lyrics to that song. Delete and fast forward, my son. The elections are over, and nobody won. You think it's all ending, but it's just setting in, so delete and fast forward, my friend. Delete and fast forward the news. The truth is the truth, but believe what you choose. When we blow the whole world back to where it began, just delete and fast forward again. The rally is scheduled for September 29th. Well, the point that I want to make with that article, it's interesting on its own merit, but the point that I would like to make is I've never been able to understand how the right-wing conservative audience can really love these singer-songwriters like Willie Nelson, like John Mellencamp, like Bruce Springsteen. One of Bruce Springsteen's biggest fans is Chris Christie. You know, the pant-load former governor from New Jersey, one of his biggest fans. It's like, do you guys listen to the lyrics? Do you read the interviews? Do you understand anything about this individual? How can you Chris Christie will stand there with a Bic lighter in his hand in the front row of a Bruce Springsteen concert until he drops. It's like, are you deaf? Are you hearing anything that the guy says? I don't know if anybody check this out, but if you get an opportunity, do so. There's an Access Television interview between Dan Rather and John Mellencamp, and Rather looks at John and he says, John, it seems like your songs are really a favorite, really well liked by the right wing of the political spectrum. And Mellencamp looks at him like he's from another planet and says, well, I'm about as left wing as you can possibly get. He says, I'm way left. He says, as a matter of fact, I sang for Barack Obama And afterward, I got to meet him, and I told him, I said, "You're just not far enough left for me." And I looked at Dan Rather, and I thought, God, do you not know anything about the guy? Or was that just a misstatement? Or I don't know. I've never have been able to figure that one out. And then for all of these fans that love these major, extremely talented, huge artists in every category of music, even television and movies, actors, but they love everything about them except they believe everything about them and trust them, but they don't listen to their political views. They don't listen to the lyrics of their songs. How is that? How can you be a fan of popular music and have only as your benchmark somebody like Kid Rock or Ted Nugent? Ted Nugent, Kid Rock. Who else is out there that's right? Hardly anybody. Everybody else that is so beloved by all of these fans, they're all on the left. Everything that they sing about is all about the left when it comes to, if they do sing about politics. Something to ponder. You get that one figured out, drop me a line at Podcast by George. All right, let's talk climate change. Here's something that we all need to think about, and this appeared recently in the Associated Press. Dateline, Washington, D.C. A warmer world makes for nastier hurricanes. Scientists say they are wetter, they possess more energy, and they intensify faster. Their storm surges are more destructive because climate change has already made the seas rise and thus dumping more rain. Study after study shows that climate change in general makes hurricanes worse. But determining the role of global warming in a specific storm, such as Hurricane Florence or the typhoon out in China, is not so simple, at least not without detailed statistical and computer analysis. The Associated Press consulted with 17 meteorologists and scientists who study climate change, hurricanes, or both. A few experts remain cautious about attributing global warming to a single event, but most of the scientists clearly see the hands of humans in Florence. Florence is yet another poster child for the human supercharged storms that are becoming more common and destructive as the planet warms, said Jonathan Overpeck, Dean of the Environment School at the University of Michigan. For years, when asked about climate change and specific weather events, scientists would refrain from drawing clear connections. But over the past few years, the new field of attribution studies has allowed researchers to use statistics and computer models to try to calculate how events would be different in a world without human-caused climate change. A couple of months after Hurricane Harvey, studies found that global warming significantly increased the odds for Harvey's record-heavy rains. All right, so that's our climate change story for this edition of Podcast by George, and that's our episode. I want to say thanks for listening in, and hope you'll listen to another podcast soon. Our interviews are still coming. I'm still going to get that field recorder here that I've been talking about in the next day or two. I wish you well, and listen in soon for another Podcast by George.